Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 9 p.m. here in Poland, and I believe it should be -5 degrees Celsius, which is about 4 foot 3 inches in Fahrenheit, which is very cold. And I am talking with Vince Barwinski. He is based in Australia. He's an author, and yeah, we Australia was in the news recently because of what happened in Bankstown, but that's one of the topics of discussion we'll get to. So yeah, Vince, I know it's 6 a.m. in the morning for you, so thank you very much for joining me at this inconvenient hour. But yeah, it will be interesting to learn about what's happening in Australia, Islam in Australia, and just your perspectives on World War II, what happened there, what's happening now. Your thoughts, because you've written a lot about this, you've thought in depth about this. So yeah, welcome to everyone, and welcome, Vince.
Yeah. Thanks, Lloyd. Honored to be on your show. I'll just start there, just saying how we first met. It's about 3 weeks ago, early this month. I first saw you being interviewed on Rebecca Bar-Steph's show. You're going through on the Sharia manual, the reliance of the traveller, and some of the disturbing quotes from that show, and then I ended up taking a few screenshots. I then looked on your Google Drive, some of your documents. I'll get to it later, like Islamut Taria and in Australia, and how they even had a constitution devised for Australia. We'll get into that later.
That organization that was, I believe, banned in the UK.
Yes, it was banned. Yes, I looked to find later it was banned in the UK, and on their Australian chapter website, the links given to that document is gone. It's disappeared, and you can't surf them either with the Wayback Machine. They don't allow it. But I found a document very similar actually on their Canadian chapter website, so downloaded. And that is a chilling document. I think they think that within 25 years, they said for Australia, but you can transcribe that to Canada. That in 25 years they'll have Australia completely under control. Islam, a state where even if no party which is not Islamic is not allowed. So virtually, that would be like a full-on Islamic dictatorship, caliphate.
But Muslims are very good at propaganda, as we spoke about previously, and which you're well aware of, and which we'll get to. They've learned very, very good propaganda methods from the Soviets, because these groups were funded and were trained, collaborated with the Soviets back in the 60s and 70s, because they realized they couldn't win militarily, so they had to win using ideological warfare. And the despair that is caused by the claim that, yeah, we're going to outbreed you, and within 25 years, it's a demographic shift, and you may as well just lay down your arms and give up and roll over and play dead now. That's kind of a drumbeat. But, I mean, sometimes I think, what are your thoughts? Because sometimes I think it's like saying, you know what, it was 10 degrees Celsius this morning at 6 a.m., but at 12, it was 25 degrees. And if it keeps going like this, by 6 p.m., it's going to be 97 degrees in the shade, because it's like everyone assumes it's a straight line. It's just, but at some point, there has to be resistance. At some point, there's going to be mistakes. And at some point, people are going to go, hold on, wait. That's my view. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I know. If you look at it in a linear fashion, you can see it's really disturbing and chilling. But you would like to think somewhere that there's going to be a resistance. But you would think, for example, in Britain, something there has to happen soon. I think now, out of all, Britain, it seems actually all of Western Europe, it's really concerning. You've got to think, though, as you said, people would have to fight back. It's interesting you mentioned that. I had a gentleman, Harry Cummins. He appeared at a group called Voting Matters here at meeting earlier this month here in Brisbane. He was born in Townsville in North Queensland, but he lived most of his life in Britain. Was he was an academic, quite a renowned academic, but he had to get out. He had to leave. He's I think a year ago he came back to Australia, and he's written this. He's written this book. I've just read the introduction,
Harry
Suicide Blonde.
Cummins, Suicide Blonde. Let me
Yeah,
find that.
okay. Yeah, and my friend Vincent, he can't put this book down.
What's about it?
But I think he reinforces what a lady, Melanie, British Jewish lady, Melanie Phillips says. I think at the moment, with this woke mentality, the West doesn't seem to have even the will to fight for itself. Yes, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the West at the moment doesn't even have the will, to fight for its way of life. Now, I think in America there has been a turnaround now with the election of Trump, right? You could argue that I've heard it argued that maybe perhaps Britain is where America was maybe back in 2020, in the middle of their summer riots, which I will discuss in depth later.
Yeah. It says here the West must abandon, if it wants to survive, the West must abandon universalism or multiculturalism, which is interesting. You never see leftists, wokerati, say, Japanese, the Japan is just too Japanese. We need more white people in here. Too little diversity.
Yeah.
Or Nigeria is too black. Oh my God, too many black people. Look at all these black people. What the heck's going on here? We need some whites in here, please. You never hear that, but it's no. You white people. Yeah, you. What is this? We need to diminish you. We need to send you packing. We need to be humble. We need to get 42 IQ Nepalese in here because you need some balance to the force. It's always a one-way street, and it's always very much about subjugation, about the humiliation of Western white Christian populations, and then that's something very disturbing.
That's right. And here's the thing too. You said like Islam took a lot of the propaganda methods, from the Soviet system. Yeah, that's what's occurred to me. And that's what's led to what I call the red-green axis. On other shows, I have heard that Carlos the Jackal, the assassin, he apparently said that we will only bring down America with something like with a combination of Islam and Marxism. And I was just thinking last night, Karl Marx, look at him. He really was utterly the ultimate deadbeat, an absolute racist.
Yes.
Quintessential, you could say, self-loathing Jew.
He allowed apparently 2 of his infant children to die because he left them neglected. And starved them to death. And then both of his daughters engaged in suicide pacts with their husbands and killed themselves. The one daughter's husband did not murder himself. He decided to call it quits at the last minute. But I mean, you're talking about someone who loves death, and there's an overlap with Islam there. There's a hatred of the rest of the world. Yes,
there is. Yeah, and actually, just on that point, with 2 daughters of Karl Marx committing suicide, when I read about that seemed very close to what they have in Canada right now with MAID, MAID, medical assistance in dying. Their whole mindset seemed to be just so in line with that. So again, it comes down to this, to this culture of death. I think it's chilling for me.
Something you have a way of really sparking my thinking, because you say things and they really evoke memories and thoughts in my head about the situation that's going on. I mean, as an author, obviously you think in a certain way, but there's just So tell you what, speak a little bit, and I'll take some notes, and then I'll come back and just respond to some of the things you're saying, because they're really getting me thinking, and I don't want to interrupt you too much. So let me rather just take some notes, and I'll raise some points and get your feedback on them.
Okay, yeah. So just get on with. So anyway, I'll get back there. Yeah, with that red-green axis, it's chilling. Thinking of Carlos the Jackal. And on one hand, I think it's a rather strange alliance at first, because you think Islam does believe in a God, well, a God, some description. I now realise from 2 years ago he's not the same God. But the thing is, what was I going to say? They believe in the God. Ah, yes, I said it. They have a common enemy, though, right now, and that's basically America, Western civilization, and Christianity in general.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, it seems like a marriage may be made in heaven, or dare I say, made in hell.
No.
But
Yeah.
if heaven forbid, God forbid, Christianity's wiped out, America collapses, Western civilization collapses, these whole woke idiots like Queers for Palestine, as if, like a parallel, like Chickens for Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example, they will be lined up against the wall to be shot like I would be, right? And I could have at least the last minute, like chuckle to myself. The other culture that might happen, there would be probably between Islam and the Chinese Communist Party. You would think too at some stage, that would come to a head.
Yeah.
But look, what I might do, I might just get started for the moment now, get started on my book.
Let me just make a couple of points. You spoke of Europe.
Yeah.
Someone spoke to me. I spoke to someone recently, very smart guy, makes also like you. And there's only a couple of guys that I speak with that are really insightful. I mean, really say things that really just get me buzzing. But he said that, Christians, we don't think about Islam. We don't think about Muhammad. We don't care about the Quran. But Muslims, 60% of the Quran is about us, the kafir, the infidel, the unclean, dirty, despised kafir. In their mosques, in their sermons, in their books, they constantly talk about the non-Muslim, us. We wake up, we think about our day. The coffee, we think about tea, we think about work. They get up and they also think about our day, about how we are not Muslims and that's a problem. So we are top of mind. We're the only thing in their mind. Whereas we don't care about them at all. And this is a problem. We need to balance it out by going, hold on, wait, these people, we might not care about the devil, but the devil cares about us. He is planning and plotting. But and then there's the enemy within. So Europe, it's not because Europe is weak. It's not because its people don't dislike what's going on. It's not because they aren't protesting or wanting to protest or wanting to resist. They're not allowed to because the enemy has infiltrated. The enemy has undermined. The enemy, there are converts that you don't know are converts. There's money coming in, billions of dollars from Qatar, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, that is undermining Western democracy. All of these October 7 marches, these Hamas marches in universities, that's not organic. These people have been pouring billions in for 15 years now. Since roughly 2010, they've been pouring in. We only know it from 2010 because that's when the records started being kept, roughly. They're pouring billions of dollars to influence minds, to influence students. So this is not organic. And I think that if people were given room, no one voted for this. And I think people would fight back. What are your thoughts on what I've said? Your feedback on that?
Oh, yeah. No. In my article on the Israel-Hamas war, I delved into how, money, well, first of all, mostly it was from George Soros, but I actually watched a video of yours recently, it was from 9 months ago, where you covered indeed, the infinite, like almost infinite amount of money coming in. Yes, you did cover Qatar, and I've heard of money coming in from Qatar, but you also highlighted one that seems to be neglected, is Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia. There was a lot I hadn't heard. The influence they have, but it all comes down to them, yes, and so much money goes into the universities and influences the minds of really impressionable young, I suppose, university students, to just only to only see the surface, the the surface of the issue that it looks like big bad Israel, vilifying, victimizing poor little Palestine, but
Yeah.
they won't look below the surface for the
Right.
to see to see the true history. I've always been pro-Israel, but my knowledge of the whole conflict was a bit. I think it was a little bit on the superficial side, but it was after October 7th I was committed that I actually spent months. It probably was like a small book in itself that I wrote on the Israel-Hamas conflict, but also the history that led up to it. My focus was more on George Soros. He has funded a lot of these left-wing groups that, by the way, they were rampaging and pillaging through the American summer of 2020 in the wake of George Floyd's death. But it's like 4 years later they've turned it on a dime to now go absolutely crazy over the Israel-Hamas issue and vilifying Israel. That was chilling. Like one organisation I will cover later called Freedom Road Socialist Organisation. They were behind the sparking actually of the riots in the summer of 2020. But you'll see them later that they figured prominently in the anti-Israel protests in the wake of October 7th. So forth. It wasn't till more after my essay then that I learned more then about the influence, the money coming in from all the Arab countries. First of all, I heard a lot of focus on Qatar, and I think certainly you mentioned them. But as I already said, I didn't hear so much of the money coming in from Saudi Arabia as well.
Well, it's huge ones. I'll bring up some of it. These figures are old. I'll bring up some of it. You know what? But also, you mentioned a different argument as well, which is very valid. The whole idea of killing people, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And to murder people is to undermine the value of life. Because atheists don't, inherently, their philosophy does not value life, because we are not made of anything that's in the image of God. We are simply matter. And it's all mechanical. So there's no God, there's no soul, there's nothing that gives you inherent dignity beyond, I don't know, bed bugs. You have no dignity outside of, there's so. But what this means is that one of the few people realize that one of the major elements of any ideological war is to demoralize a people. And people think, oh, it just means I'll make you feel a bit sad and depressed. No, it means to undermine your morals, to change your moral values, to change your moral structures, literally to strip away your Christian moral values. So they've undermined people's morals because they see Hamas as moral. They see murder and kidnapping and murder of like the Bebas children as moral. And so a moral realignment is necessary, and those morals aren't going to come from Karl Marx. Those morals will only come from Christianity.
Yes, indeed. This is, in a funny way, the dystopia that descended upon the world after, say, after the outbreak, of the COVID pandemic. At first, I was just focusing all on the political side of it, but by Easter 2022, I started recognizing the whole the spiritual aspect of it, and I could see that at the center of it, they were out to destroy Christianity, and in this vacuum, wokeism, cultural neo-Marxist wokeism, was going to fill that void, and honestly, that thought really terrified me. And eventually, I went back, and my dad was a devout Catholic. I ended up at first going to what I call the Novus Mundi Ordo, New World Order, Vatican II Mass, the standard Mass. Right. I won't get into it now, but I've had issues with it, and then that led me to the traditional Latin Mass, and I learned some history there about how Vatican II came about. but also I found an astonishingly different mindset from people going to a Latin Mass as to ones compared to ones that went to the Novus Mundi Ordo Mass.
Mm-hmm.
The ones at the Latin Mass were at least aware something's going on. Honestly, there is something not right. Whereas the people from the Novus Mundi Ordo, honestly, they had no idea. And honestly, I couldn't connect with them. They're really, I couldn't connect with them. And what was most disturbing is in September to early October, they embraced this hideous Gaia earth worshipping cult of season of creation. So are the Protestant churches as well. And of course, naturally, our so-called Pope, I don't recognize him as my Pope. I can't recognize a Marxist apostate as my Pope. That Jorge Mario Bergoglio, of course, he's behind it. I've written articles on that, and I first confronted a priest about it back in September 2022. That didn't end too well, and then just last September.
For a moment. It's,
yeah.
Because I've looked up I've had this discussion with regards to Catholicism, and that's like saying Trump is not my president, because for all intents and purposes, the fact is he is the Pope. Now, you may have there've been bad popes, there've been good popes. They're bad presidents, they're good presidents. He's not the founder of the religion. He is, let's say, the manager. The business still does the business, but the manager, maybe the manager's not a good one. Maybe he's a drunk. Maybe he's embezzling, stealing from the till. Who knows? That said, he's still the manager. He may be a bad manager, but at some point he'll go and he'll get a new manager. It's just that right now you have a bad manager. It's, but he is quite literally still the Pope. And
he's literally the Pope. But I understand that. I think for me, what I'll say is I can't have any respect for him. Whatever modicum of respect I had for him, that evaporated when I saw him. He was praying in front of at Christmas time, in front of the baby Jesus lying on the keffiyeh.
Yeah, true. He's not the best Pope I think Catholicism has ever had, but he's still the Pope, And the point is, you wait for him to move on, and things will change. That's what I think.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into a whole. I don't want to get into that big debate. What I've got here is the College of Foreign Gift Reporting from ed.gov. This is a US website. These figures are probably 3-4 years old at this point. It should be noted that Israel, for instance, in this particular year, Israel had made 275 donations of $53 million. China had made 680 million in almost 1,600 donations, right? Now you look at Afghanistan, Bahrain, there's 51 Arab bloc countries or something like that, 51 Arab bloc countries. Now you look here, Kazakhstan spent more money than Israel. Kuwait spent more money than Israel. Now, we know that the money that Israel's spending in universities goes to typically biotech or farming, hydroponics, farming. Now, you look at what the Muslims have spent. Qatar, this is $1.253 billion, and Saudi, $650 million. Now, there's ways and means to hide this. We can estimate that whatever number we see here from these Muslim spends, you can double or triple it, probably without being wrong. So you're somewhere 2.5. You can at least double these without being wrong. Guess that. But look at this. You're looking at $3.8 billion spent in universities, elite American universities, by these organizations. So, for instance, the Islamic donations are 69.7 times more than Israel's, but somehow Israel has all this influence. This is 70 times more money that we know of, right? So there's a problem here. Oops. So there's definitely a problem here. If we look at these spends, let me go here. For instance, you look at the Georgetown University. For instance, Israel donated $507,000. George Washington funding from Muslims was over $100 million. Georgetown, $377 million from 2019 to 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, this is vast sums of money. So these people are pouring money into propaganda, and you got to ask yourself, what are they getting for this money? This is Israel down here. This is Qatar
Oh
alone,
yeah.
right? And so you add all of these together, this line runs well off the page to the right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. Look, look. I think a way people have. It occurred to me recently. A way to look at this with raving anti-Semites. You know, they say the Jews control all the banks. The Jews control everything, even though they only make up 15.2 million of all of humanity.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
and
true.
and the Arabs, well, the Arabs, well, combined, they're 200 million, and Muslims, well, I think they're well, you considerably
Yeah, you're going to look at,
well
well,
over
yeah,
a billion.
if you look at, for instance, super yachts, who owns the most super yachts, right? Who,
Mhm.
seriously, you compare like Russians and everyone else, and
Mhm.
Arabs who are literally floating on oil with the Jews. Yeah, hot trend in 2017: rise of Islamic banks on Main Street, USA. So a quiet revolution is going on under the radar. The rise of Islamic financial institutions. And so we've got Islamic banks that fund terrorism and Hillary
Yeah,
Clinton and Iranian terror groups. And you're looking at in 2000, they were nearly at they said you had $3 trillion estimated in 2016. And in the 2020s, $4 trillion. I can guarantee you Israel does not have $4 trillion to spend annually in the US on banking.
uh, absolutely not. Look, the way now I look with Israel's conflict with Hamas, it's not that they're just fighting Hamas. No, they're fighting the media war. But to me, they are up against, really, you could say, almost the entire Islamic world, right? And to to me, you've got to me then, you can look at in a David and Goliath conflict. Israel are David. The Muslim world, they are Goliath.
Yeah. No, agreed.
The,
Agreed.
the, yeah, the KGB turned that on its head. See, in the early 1960s. I mean, that was a brilliant piece, of you know, really of propaganda. That's unfortunately, I think subverted the whole. Well, in very large part of the Western view on 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 the Israel-Palestinian conflict overall. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Just to, yeah, so you've got, so just so everyone knows, the audience knows, there is, those numbers are, I mean, I did that slide deck originally, I think 5 years ago, and I updated it like 3 years ago. I went through it again. And so those numbers are several years old. And I'll give you an example. Saudi Arabia, during Trump's first term, which ended what, 2020,
yeah.
Trump's first term, he was, going to pull visas from terrorists coming from Muslim countries. So Saudi said, "Oh my gosh, you Islamophobe, we're going to pull our money
Yeah.
out of the U.S." And Saudi, on paper, officially had $250 billion in the U.S. They ended up threatening officially to pull 750 billion. So they had 3 times more money in the country than was declared on paper. So this is why we know there's a lot more money doing
All
things
right.
in the US than are officially recorded. There's ways and means. So if you keep your funding under a certain level or you do fewer than a certain number of donations, you don't have to report it. So you can get away with murder. Or you give the money to your friend and your friend donates it through his whatever and it's not seen. So yeah. Um, yeah, you wrote a book about Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Bonhoeffer, yeah, and it really is the main. It's about him, and so here's the book. Um, it's a big, heavy book,
Oh wow.
and about 30% about I'll just roughly about 30% of it is sources. So just to prove I'm not plucking stuff out of thin air. Um, that's the photo of a bronze cross monument to Dietrich Bonhoeffer in modern day Polish Wrocław.
All right.
Um, I was there. That was in February 2005 during my 10-month stint teaching English in Poland. I was based in Radom, about 90 kilometres south of Warsaw. Um, but and below it are the other two plaques in in Polish and German, describing the life of Dietrich. I start the book mentioning this bloke. That's in front of the near the modern day Catholic Church of St. Elizabeth's. It would have had a Protestant history too, but it's a Catholic church now.
Right.
And that's me on the back. That's
I used
this
that
is me.
picture.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, that's a much younger me and much younger and much slimmer me back in 2008 in a Taiwanese photo studio. There and the middle photo here at top that I took at the Auschwitz concentration camp museum just before I left Poland, which says George Santayana. Yeah, those who do not remember history are bound to they're bound to relive through it. That was the Spanish American philosopher George Santayana. Yeah, and
so what made you write about this, and what are the major lessons you learned, and what are the moral lessons that you've learned from this? I mean, what got you into writing this?
I think, well, first of all, being there and finding the Bronze Cross monument to Dietrich, but you could say that started on that day in mid-February 2005, and it was an absolutely miserable day, winter's day. Later that year, I did return to Australia, what happened is I thought I'd first write a book about my time in Poland in general, traveling through Poland, but then when I got to discussing and all the monuments I'd seen, the history behind them, but then when I got to the monument about Dietrich, I found I was stuck on him. I couldn't get past him, and I thought, at this rate, I'm never going to finish a book. And then I had the idea, wait a minute, I might as well start writing a book instead on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And in the process, this led me to I heard about his relationship with Ruth von Kleist, the Junker matriarch. Now, first of all, Dietrich was born on the 4th of February 1906 in German Breslau. That was, and then after the Second World War, that would become Polish Wrocław. It originally was Wrocław. I won't go into it too deeply, but before, I think it was founded in about the 990s AD. So it has a mixed Polish-Czech history. Then in 1335, it became part of from that point on, a bit unclear. Then the Polish king he gave Wrocław up, and it was for a while under the Austrian Empire, but then it became, I think, from about the 1700s, it came under the Prussian Empire, and that was the case pretty much. It was a German possession until the Second World War, because after the Second World War, then what happened? Poland ended up being translated east. It lost all this territory in the east to the Soviet Union, like the Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, and they got some compensation with German land in the east, and all those lands actually, they were the lands of Ruth von Kleist and her Junker clan. They were her land, yeah, and so the lands of the Junker of the Junkers, of which Ruth von Kleist was part of, that's now all part of Poland, now in what you would know as Pomerania, around that area.
Yeah, in
anyway,
Polish, Pomorze, they call that. Yeah, that's on the coastline, on the Baltic.
Pomorze, yeah, that's right. It is. That's what it is. Yeah. I did describe that in depth, mostly in the first chapter in which is actually a preface, kind of long introduction. I go into that in depth. But anyway, so I ended up. That's how I ended up. I thought, I might as well write a book on Dietrich. I think I can manage to finish that book in my lifetime, at least.
All right.
And I then thought, wait a minute, I might include in it, in the book, the story of Ruth von Kleist and a Junker clan, because I noticed there was only one book in English.
Yeah, what was important about them, and what was the reason for that? Was there something you
Well,
saw?
what it did is, I'll tell you where it was. I knew one thing: you've got to have a book that's unique. There's already been a number of books written about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I needed to have something about the book that made it more than just another book about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So I thought I might go into more deep dive as well into the story of the of the von Kleist, because they were deeply linked with the story of Dietrich. But here's the other thing, I wanted to sort of bring a Polish aspect into it. Well, the von Kleists, their lands ended up, well, they bordered, well, in between the two world wars, their lands bordered Poland, and that in a way opened up the aspect, the subtitle of my book. See, the main title of my book is The Pastor and the Matriarch of the German Underground in Their Times, but the subtitle is A Polish Perspective. And with bringing in the story of the von Kleists, who are only written about sparsely in books in English, I thought that was the opportunity then to bring in the Polish perspective aspect of my book and make my book something unique. Yeah, for the von Kleist, this book was my main source. Yeah, Matriarch of Conspiracy, Ruth von Kleist, 1867 to 1945, by Jane Paischer. Yeah, but of course in her book, naturally, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is prominently mentioned. Yeah, as well. So, and I thought, because of my time, I spent 10 months in Poland from September 2004 to early July 2005. I remember it was American Independence Day, July 4th, that I left Radom to make my way then to Germany, finally to Frankfurt, to fly back to Australia. To get married, actually, yeah. And,
Yeah, can you just but what was the reason for writing about? What's the moral lesson? What is the actual
moral
reason?
lesson? I'll get it. Well, what happened? I think myself, I've always been deeply. My father was an autodidact of history. Especially all my life, I'd studied Marxism and National Socialism all my life, and I think the moral of the story is essentially, it was that I've got the title here. See how I could sum it up. I've got it in here. In memory of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Ruth von Kleist-Retzow, and their kin, who dared to uphold everything that was decent in a world of indecency and injustice. That was, I think that would be the core moral lesson, I think, behind my book.
Okay.
And right now, when we look at this dystopia and the disinformation going, first of all, like with the COVID jabs, how people were being forced, to take, jabs against their will or lose their livelihood. I'm fortunate I wasn't put in that position. But when I saw, like, for example, the American summer riots, they were chilling for me, because I thought in my book I had written in depth about the collapse of Weimar Germany, and in so many ways, America in the summer of 2020, it reminded me of a crumbling Weimar Germany, or as well, like the Cultural Revolution in China under Mao Zedong from, 1966 to 1976, and how we've got to speak up. And really, we have to speak up. And now the other thing is how you have the encroachment now of Islam into Western civilization, into our institutions. We have to speak up. Oh, the other thing, what's the other one? Yes. What about, like, the this hideous thing now with the transgender? agenda, it's infiltrating our schools. It's infiltrated our schools here in Australia. Like I said there with my book, I think we have to speak up, and I think that's the moral lesson. Yeah.
So it's like
And
a
that's why I
social
wrote
contagion. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, he's
Chapter
loaded as
29.
yeah, he's loaded as a hero merely for the. I mean, despite anything else he may have done, he's loaded as a
Mm,
hero just for speaking up, just for dissenting publicly. I mean, that alone has marked him as a hero for life. I mean, he's earned legend status just for that. I mean, so would you say that it's important for us as individuals who have governments that aren't serving our interests to speak up? So at the very least, just speak up, because that itself is a powerful tool. Just speaking the truth,
that,
just being honest and not being silent or silenced.
yeah, yeah. We look, absolutely. We have to speak up. That for sure. Look, in my job, my wife and I, we came to the conclusion we wouldn't take the jab. So I looked at all, for example, all the evidence. Something was fishy, and
Yeah.
I go by what Dr. Robert Malone says. Just because I'm not a medical expert, that doesn't mean I lose my right to think objectively and draw my own conclusions. And I'm not taking it. And the good thing is, because I'm an electric meter reader, so my job's outside. I think my company, they didn't force me to take the jab. However, if they had forced me to take the jab, I would have left the job. I had a friend of mine. His wife, she had a great job, very lucrative job, working in the laboratory. She had to take the jab, and she said, "No, I'm not taking it." And they went through a lot of that put them through a lot of financial hardship. But hey, in the end, they stuck it out. I can understand why. Yeah, I can understand though people. I mean, though,
Look, I
taking the
mean,
jab.
you didn't always have a choice. People were coerced. I mean, they would make nice noises, but for instance, my father died and I needed to go home for the funeral. And then, of course, they locked down the airports, they restricted travel, and I couldn't go home to see my father. And I could only go a month later. We only,
Yes.
things. And in theory, you could fly without having taken the jab. In theory. In practice, they were going to abandon you wherever the heck they abandoned you, and how you were going to get anywhere was entirely your problem. The airlines were willing to treat you in the most brutal fashion, in the most callous fashion, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it was effectively impossible to fly without having proof of the jab. So it was a serious issue. I mean, I did not have a choice. You really were. In theory, you have a choice. In practice, you absolutely do not. So I
No.
mean, I think we won't fall for that again. I do think we won't fall for that again.
No. Yeah, which is good. I mean, at the time, I resolved I won't be. For the time being, I won't be flying. But I'm glad, for example, like last year, my wife and I, we were able to fly to Taiwan to finally, catch up again with family. And I'm glad we could do that without taking those stinking jabs.
Tell me, what is
Um,
the main lesson that people could learn from Dietrich Bonhoeffer? I mean, well, what is the lesson we can gain from his example? And the second question, what are the parallels you see then versus now in Australia, in Europe? I mean, America seems to be going through a bit of a renaissance now. The emperor is now back on
mhm.
his throne, and things
Yeah,
seem to be
yeah,
changing. But this also seems to be influencing other places. They're inspiring others. I mean, just his example is inspiring others. But of course, I mean, there are two paths. You've got people working for freedom. You've got the people working for tyranny, and there's a race to the end. There's a race to the goal here. I think the ground is
yeah.
crumbling under the feet of the guys racing towards tyranny, but they still have a
Yes.
lot of power and funding. You spoke of, sorry, George Soros. George Soros doesn't
Uh,
have Elon Musk money. He's not nearly as wealthy. George Soros was getting funded by US aid. So which is crazy. He was spending American taxpayers' money to destroy their culture and their country. But yeah, what's the main lesson that we can learn from him and apply to ourselves, and what are the parallels you see?
If you had to, I think if you had to distill it down to the most basic, I'd say, silence in the face of evil is evil.
Okay.
Is evil. That it down to its most, to the most basic. In my book, there is a passage where I talk about how Dietrich was saying, we can't just point he said here at Germany, he said we can't just point the finger at Himmler, Goering, and Heydrich and Hitler. We can't look left, we can't look right in the church pews at who's responsible. If you were silent, then you've got to accept you were complicit. I think that was maybe why General Eisenhower was in the German community. I think he even got them involved, didn't he, in burying the bodies. They found at the Dachau camp, the Dachau concentration camp, I think. Yeah. And I also remember what he said. He said, "Get this down, write this down, record this," because he said somewhere in the future some arsehole will say this never happened. Lo and behold, and look at one of the churches that I've went to. I've heard people say that that church that led me to having a massive fight with one of them over October 7th. I ended up that particular church. I ended up leaving, and fortunately in Brisbane I found another Latin Catholic mass, which I'm grateful for, which I've been attending now since April, since I got back from Taiwan. Yeah. But as for the other thing is with the parallels. Well, I mean, in my book, the major aspect of my book was writing about how the crumbling of the Weimar Republic in the early 1930s, especially in the wake of the Great Depression. And there on my screens, when I was just looking at this I thought, this is bizarre. It's like I'm seeing, like a tragic piece of history, replaying itself. And then as I dug more deeply, like into Black Lives. Well, see what was happening in the wake of George Floyd's death. I was kind of confused. What's going on? I then ended up looking at Black Lives Matter website, and it sent a chill down my spine. And then I found out that they're Marxist connections, and then with the violence overall, the whole Marxist connections overall, and how our corrupt media, like for example, one of our mainstream media is Channel 7, and their US correspondent is this individual named Tim Lester. Honestly, I look back, he's a complete clown. He was saying like the violent. He says these protests are mostly peaceful. He said, but the ones that are violent, they're just really white supremacists or white extremists. Just out to discredit Black Lives Matter. Yeah. I saw, and I mentioned that in chapter 29 of my book. And see, chapter 29 was rather belatedly added to my book. I had been on my way then, to finishing my book, but I said, I've got to write this additional chapter. Now, all of my book except one chapter was professionally edited. My editor was an excellent editor, but she was really left-leaning. But in the end, 90% of her recommendations I took up, and I was very happy. I thought she was able to help me present my message in a more, more lucid, coherent fashion. But when I approached it, I said, I wish to have like this chapter edited. She couldn't do it. It was just too confronting. Now, I suppose I commend her the Cat and Wood Massacre, something that would have been something I think pretty confronting for her. But writing about something that was virtually right here and now, in the West, it was too much for us. So in the end, what I ended up doing, I edited it myself. I just read it and reread it 6 times. I'm happy, and it's in there.
Yeah.
That's the last of the regular chapters, and then after that, I have the 4 supplemental chapters on Polish history and World War II. Like the Cut and Wood Massacre, strangely enough, I can link back. There is a link back there to the von Kleists. I'll get into that more into another episode.
But can I just
episode,
address a few things here?
Yeah.
There's a quote by Yevgeny Yevtushenko that said, "When the truth is replaced by silence," I should type in, "when the truth is replaced by silence, the silence is a lie."
Yeah, I love that on your channel, your YouTube channel.
It's actually a Russian dissident who wrote that, and it's an amazing quote. It's just an amazing quote. So
yes, yeah.
So we can never let the silence stand. We cannot let evil simply storm the earth with its lies, and we sit here in silence. And then he says further, "But the Russian people have a beautiful proverb: a lie is like a bow. You hide the ends in water, but the middle protrudes. You hide the middle, and the ends stick out." So, there's a saying that I learned as a child growing up. There is not enough darkness in all the world to put out the light of one small candle. So despite all the darkness, our job, if all we can do is to be one small candle, then so be it. But let us all be a candle. I want to mention also Saudi. Someone mentioned, yes, please go ahead.
Oh no, amen. I was just saying amen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Candle in the darkness. Yeah.
Yeah, someone mentioned the Saudi main cleric said publicly that Hamas was bringing shame on Islam with the B-Bus freak show. Don't be fooled by that. He said they're bringing shame on Hamas. He never condemned their actions. He never said they were wrong. He didn't say the murders were unacceptable. At no time did he actually, as far as I know, condemn the actions. He said that Hamas is bringing shame on Islam because he's bringing shame on the Muslims by being a little on the nose. They should have been a bit more circumspect in embarrassing Islam. They didn't do something wrong by killing the children or the family. That's not the problem. But what they're doing, it's like flaunting your thievery. It's bad for the government if you flaunt your theft, right? Keep it quiet. Do it silently, but don't bring attention because you're making us look bad. That's all they're saying. Hamas is making us look bad. He's not condemning the atrocities. And then someone mentioned this term. Now, I'm going to be blunt here. CSPI, the organization founded by Bill Warner, I might be more familiar with them than most people realize, and there's some good people there. But if you had to take every single member of CSPI and put them on one side of the room and me on the other, and we have a debate, I would mop the floor with a lot of them. So the simple fact is they're cowards. Their main function is to sell books and cause no controversy. And if you cause controversy, they won't get books sold, you see? So their aims are more, shall we say, commercial, diluted than pure. Let's put it that way. And so he has the term political Islam. There is no political Islam. There is only Islam. It is a political system. It is a military system. It is a moral, well, technically it's a legal system. And then the terms Islamist and Islamism. There are no Islamists. There is no Islamism. You, by using those terms, by promoting those terms, you are basically, what you're doing is you are, as a Christian Westerner, you are siding with the enemy. You are aiding and abetting a lie. You may as well say, but it has nothing to do with Islam. That's not a real Muslim. You may as well jump on that bandwagon, sign up and get dawah checks from the Muslim Brotherhood by using these terms. There are no Islamists. There are Muslims. There is no Islamism. There is Islam. There is no Islamic extremism. There is no radicalism. There is no radical Islam. There is no extreme Islamic ideology. There is Islam. That's it. The difference is that you have azima and rukhsa, strictness and lenience, dispensation. You have Muslims who are strict, and this is compulsory. If these strict Muslims don't do what they do, like drive a car through a crowd and kill people, if they don't do that, then sin of non-performance and the crime of non-performance falls on the entire ummah, and they all go to hell. That's the difference. So you can promote a lie. Like I said, you may as well sign up for the dawah and start doing it. You may as well go to Ali Dawah and say, "Can I join you, Dr. Zakir Naik? Can I spread your message? Because you are promoting a lie. It is a falsehood, and you are promoting the claim of it's not real Muslims. It's got nothing to do with Islam. That's what you're doing." Excuse me, I had to go on that little rant. Any
No,
comment?
no. Look, well, look. I'm starting to come around to that. To that way of thinking. Back in March, I was on holiday in Taiwan. I did finish reading Hitler's Mein Kampf, and I have started now. Jihad, yeah, my jihad,
my
yes,
jihad. It's
yeah.
literally my jihad.
Yeah. That's it, yeah, in Arabic, and I have started now. It's sporadic, I'll admit, starting to read the Quran. It's a long, hard road, but I am one quarter of the way through it. And if I've come to the conclusion, the radical is, what we'd call the radical Muslims, like the terrorists, they are just following the Quran. They are just following the Quran to the absolute letter.
Yeah.
It's just an endless diatribe of incoherent. Of incoherent Christian and Jew hatred.
Okay, so I just need to raise. Sorry to interrupt. So Justin Wooten, I'm going to ban you from the channel, so you can expect a ban any moment, and please enjoy the experience. When it speaks of the synagogue of Satan, it says those who claim they are Jews but are not. He doesn't say they are no Jews. He says these people are claiming to be Jews. Now, you should know that Muslims claim to be Christians, the original Christians, the only Christians. Jesus was a Muslim, right? So, yeah, I think you're misunderstanding deliberately. Now, people don't do this because they're intelligent or because they're intellectual. They do it because they hate Jews. It's not about loving the Palestinians. It's about hating Jews. So you also seem to not understand that you have communists and you have Muslims that are serving Muslim interests. So, yeah, I'm not sure why you would want to make claims like this. So yeah, the black Hebrew Israelites claim to be Jews. They're not Jews. So yeah, I guess we're going to have to remove your privileges because I don't have time to promote propaganda. I understand my message may not resonate or get through to you or influence you, and that's fine. But you can take your propaganda elsewhere. Sorry, back to you, Vince. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, on that synagogue of Satan, I do broach that concept in my essay on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
All right.
If you were going to talk about a synagogue of Satan, why not, like, for example, the self-loathing Jew George Soros and the group, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace? They're a Marxist group. I think, again, self-loathing Jews that hate Israel. I think a while back they even occupied a Capitol building, protesting against Israel. Well, for me, I think they're much more like what John refers to in his book of Revelation as the synagogue of Satan. So if you're going to go down that path, yeah. And I've heard other anti-Semites, constantly raise that notion. Yeah. By the way,
Gnostics claim to be Christians. Gnostics are anti-Christian. Gnostics are literally anti-Christ, and they claim to be Christian. So then you're talking about those who claim they are Christians but are not, but are the church of Satan. I mean,
that's another way of putting it. Look, just a curious thing I'll bring up. I've had clash with right wing. I make a difference between right wing and left wing anti-Semites. Right wing anti-Semites, they think George Soros is pro-Zionist.
Mm-hmm.
But when I present them with the facts, and look at his website, it's all pro-Palestinian, all his material. When I say no, he's not, honestly, they're shocked. It's like the old adage that does not compute.
Yeah, how many Muslims have converted in the EU, in your government? in my government, in whatever government, and are Muslims and are aiding and abetting the Muslim cause, but have not changed their names. Right? You look in the US, how many Muslims are in the government that are aiding and abetting the destruction of the country, that because of loyalty to the Ummah and not to the country that they wore an oath under. So yeah, everyone it's so easy and convenient to just blame the Jews without actually thinking, because that takes attention off. The Sharia is explicit. People will lie about the Talmud. I know Christians, quote unquote, supposed Christians, will lie about the Talmud whole day, every day. But they won't take a moment to look at the Sharia. And the Sharia is explicit, and they'll excuse that, and they'll try to bend reality to try to somehow prove that Jesus was a Jew, and therefore, it's pathetic.
I think it's valuable that you said you have read the Talmud.
Yeah, no, I got a little OCD. I spent 3 months reading it once, going through it in detail and debunking all of these quotes that people were throwing at me, looking at them. I did several hours, not on my channel, but on another channel, and it turned people were so angry that we were starting to go through this Talmudic claims people were making. They ended up on his lawn. People literally ended up on his lawn. The FBI got involved. It got totally out of hand. I was amazed. It became a poop show. It was crazy. People were threatening my friend's life. They got his channel cancelled. He had 75,000 subs. They got his channel cancelled. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, the word. Yeah. Well, actually, in the Israel, mostly in the Israel-Hamas conflict, I do address one common passage, from the Talmud that's taken out of context, and I do address it. Of course, I couldn't address every single one. You'd be here till the end of my life. But I thought I'd just like that one example. I mean, these people, they won't look, like you said, they won't look at all the dark aspects, like from the Sharia. Law.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it. Nobody.
They don't. That I mean, that absolutely dwarfs anything you can dark insinuations you can draw from. You could possibly draw from the Talmud. Yeah.
Yeah, it's explicit. It's really, the Sharia is explicit. Yeah, you said you wrote an article that was very in the expose. It was featured in the expose, British free speech.
That's the one. Yeah. Yeah, the British free speech.
Tell us about that, how that came about, and just your thoughts and insights in regard to what you wrote in the article.
Yeah. What happened at the church I was attending, I could see after October 7th. What happened, I would usually go after church to the back of the church. There was the canteen, and we'd have a late morning, early afternoon tea, and have a discussion. And there was, look, some of it I could detect an anti-Semitic current there, but I was just happy, first of all, to find a church, Catholic church that wasn't woke. But after October 7th, I could sort of start to feel the tension rise, and I thought then, okay, I decided about a couple of weeks after October 7th, I'm going to write a huge, essay on this Israel-Hamas conflict. At first, I took 3 months, or 3 to 4 months to finish it. I finished first, I thought, in February, but then when I went on holiday in Taiwan in mid-February to early April, I decided to add more, and it wasn't, I think, till finally the middle of March I got it finished. And I'm so glad I wrote it. But what happened is, on the expose, I got involved. There was a discussion. The lady, Rhoda Wilson, oh no, hang on, another author. Rhoda Wilson is pro-Israel, but there was this other author they had on the wall called I forget her name. Anyway, she was really leftist leaning. And then I saw all these in the comments. I saw all these raving anti-Semitic comments, and then I started to go through, and debunk them, and quoting my essay. And I was getting trends like this, where I might get, say, 2 likes, but I'd get 10 thumbs down. And then I'd say, oh well, if I'm getting 10 thumbs down from you lot, that I think that means I must be on the right track. And then a few days later, I look in the computer and I see this article, about George Soros, funding left-wing groups. And I said, this sounds like my essay. And then when I looked at it, she's talking, Vincent Barwinski said this. It was Rhoda Wilson. She was writing about my article in a very, very,
Wow.
very favourable manner. Yeah.
Wow.
And that leftist woman there now, I think now, pretty much since then, I haven't seen her writing any more articles on the expose. Yeah.
I have a question. I'd like to know more about what you said specifically,
Yeah.
but you wrote something that you felt was necessary and that pushes back against dishonesty, against propaganda, against deception.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Against, shall we say, against a mixing of the facts, right? Or misrepresentation of the facts. I just want to get your idea of a parallel here. I went on Rebecca Barseff's show. I spoke about the Sharia.
Yeah.
I mean, did that inspire you? Because I'm assuming that you've now inspired someone else. Just in terms of your thoughts as an author and as someone who's politically and socially aware, what was the value to you of seeing me speaking on her show? What did it do for you? And then by the same token, how does your article influence others? The value of us speaking. I'm sure it must have a positive knock-on effect. Can you just give me your thoughts on that?
I think what about the show with Rebecca Barseff and those shows I've seen since, I think it's just given me some incredibly powerful ammunition to use in exposing Islam.
Mm-hmm.
The key to your claims, you're not just plucking them out of thin air. You're backing them up with their very own texts, right? So there's no wriggle room for them out of it, and because for me, I found Islam a very disturbing religion. I had already been for months been reading the Quran as much as I can, but what you revealed on Rebecca Barseff's show, like the Sharia, condoning sex with minors, and it's there in black and white. It just hit me in the face, and people, this is things people, honestly, people just need to know about. Yeah. I mean, by that time, I had already been. That was about almost a year, 11 months after I finished writing. That's the one on the expose where my essay is featured. Yeah, George Soros, the United Nations, and groups organising pro-Hamas protests. Yeah.
Right.
And I thought,
would you say then it's important for viewers, even though they feel they're small, they've got a small following? I don't have the biggest following myself. And while we're on that topic, I always forget to do this. It's not like the main thrust of my show, but I'm supposed to do YouTube stuff. Like say, remember everyone, please remember, brush your teeth at least twice a day, and brush in the morning, brush in the evening before bedtimes, and if you've gone to bed and had a nap, please brush afterwards. It's really good practice, and you're supposed to say things like that. Use toothpaste; it's healthy. Use sunscreen, things like that. And if you do like what I do here, please do like, do share, do subscribe. That's really helpful. And for those who've donated, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. It goes a really long way. So yeah, but I need to say those things. I keep forgetting, and it's just one of those things. I just need to get away. So would you say it's important for people to speak up, even if their voice is small? But it's like a lot of small pebbles becomes an avalanche, or a few small drops becomes a flood. Like lots of small drops. Would you feel that this is how we fight back? This is how we push back against the darkness?
I think so. Yeah. Look, I have met some people who know what's going on, but they're very cynical, and they said, what's the point? You're not going to make any difference. And they said, in the end, all you're going to do is put a great big target on your back, right? But but to me, I think no. I still, having written about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I just think no. You can't remain silent in the face of evil. Yeah.
On that.
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah,
you
there's a
can't do
beautiful
that.
line in a
And
fictional movie, science fiction. What's it? Alita, Battle Angel. I will not stand by in the presence of evil. And you've just said something very similar. It's a very profound thing you've just said.
yes, thanks, Lloyd. Yeah, thanks. Look, I think look what I've been struggling for so far is getting exposure. Um, I have written to a lot of prominent YouTubers, Rumble, people, on Rumble, also to the Epic Times, um, which, by the way, I do have a lifetime subscription with,
What?
who I do mention actually quite prominently in chapter 29 of my book. Yeah, they're an outlet that's much vilified by the corrupt media, but I look at what they present. Their writing, it makes sense.
Yeah, I follow them. I watch Joshua
Yeah.
Phillip. 3 times a week now. He does
Yes. Yeah.
his show. I watch it. I always watch his show. I love his presentation. I mean, they have technical issues, but yeah, I really think they're fantastic. Epoch Times and Joshua Phillip, fantastic coverage
He,
of that
you
sort.
know what? In chapter 29 of my book, Joshua gets more than just an odd mention in chapter 29 of my book. And see, like I tried to write to him, and also Jan Jekielek,
Yes,
but
yes,
I,
his
I just
interviews
never
are
get in. I
fantastic.
didn't. Yes, yeah, and I got reply. But see, I never got a reply, and it's probably hard. And one thing that's been tough too for me for my book to get the word out at me on my book. Like I'm a complete unknown,
All
right?
right.
And look, I've got very few replies. There is one I for about now since July 2023. I have been exchanging emails fairly regularly with a gentleman named Ronald Rickluck. He was the co-author of the book with Eon Mihai Pachepa, Disinformation. I've read the book, and
Yes.
by the way, that book was a major source for my Israel-Hamas essay. And I've exchanged emails with him from time to time. Actually, he invited me to come and speak this February, actually this month, at
He invited you to speak.
he invited me to speak, in Naples at the Ave Maria Law School in Naples, Florida. But I couldn't make it, unfortunately. But
Wow.
I
No,
think it was an
I've
honor.
covered his work, and
Yeah,
that of Ion Pachepa on. I did my Hitler series. When I did my series on Hitler
yeah,
as an anti-Christian, because everyone tries to say Hitler was a Christian, and when I did my series on that, like 6 or 7 parts, I used his work extensively. I mean, he does brilliant work. So yeah, great.
yeah. It's good. Look, I'll just say one thing. I took out of Mein Kampf, relevant. Um, uh, of course, there was all the disgusting, horrible stuff in Mein Kampf, as you would expect. But there was one poignant piece that Hitler wrote, where he wrote in regard to there's 3 different types of people that listen to media. Number
Hmm.
one are what we would call in the freedom movement the normies. They'll believe every single syllable that comes out of our corrupt media. But then there's a group 2. They're like the complete exact opposite. They're the types that might tend to think or maybe consider that, for example, oh, gee, maybe we've been lied to. Maybe the Earth is actually flat, right? There's that, and honestly, I've met these people. They either think the Earth is flat, or they believe that, at the very least, it's a credible theory. And one of those people, believe it or not, is Stu Peters. I've seen him do a video on it, a video interview with somebody, with a flat earther.
Right.
Quite recent, actually. Only I think it was back in September. And then there's group 3, people that know something is on, but you're not going to embrace something. The flat Earth is kind of an extreme example, but
Hmm.
and look, I've studied maths, physics, and astronomy. I've written programs predicting motions, planetary motion. Um, you know, the so I know for me that that idea is absurd. But I do actually in Israel Hamas essay, I do discuss that idea of the 3 different types of people that listen to media. And I thought, yeah, I thought that was the most piece of writing by Hitler. Yeah, in there. And I just might quickly make it.
Yeah.
I might
I'll just
digress a
make a
little.
note too, 'cause
Yeah.
someone made a very, very good point. He says if someone says that Hitler was a Christian, in the church he was attending during World War II, it should be noted as well that the church where he was baptized in and he was confirmed in, his
Mhm.
interest, he was planning to demolish it and build an observatory. So
Oh,
the church that he was most closely associated
yeah,
with, he was planning to replace it with an observatory. I mean,
with an
yeah, sure, that's
observatory.
what
Yeah,
you do. Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Well, look, yeah, it takes me aback a bit. That I can say I'm not totally surprised, because in my book early on I do discuss how the so-called, what they were called, the German Christians, they were like, it was a misnomer, but they were the sort of like pro-Hitler Christians.
Yeah.
They, for example, wanted the Old Testament removed from the Bible because it was too Jewish.
Yeah, I've covered that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
the way that they butchered the Bible. Yes, yeah, very true. Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me about your article, the one that you wrote. Just tell us a bit more about that, like some highlights from the article and things that you learned and things that you think are relevant to people now, why they
Relevant.
should know about media
Yes.
manipulation and media bias.
Yeah, I'll do that then. I'll just bring it up here. I'm just going to bring that up. Got that here. Complete email to Bonhoeffer, essay and client. Oh, here we are.
Yeah, I just want to bring this up because someone mentioned the KKK. Just so we know, the KKK, the sacred book of the KKK is called the Koran. They just put an L there. When you take the L out, it's Koran, right? The earliest symbol of
Yeah,
the KKK was the crescent and star, the Muslim crescent and star.
I remember
They,
you covering. I remember you covering that. Yeah,
they
that blew
eventually
me
had to
away.
change that. And also they burn crosses. Burning crosses is sacrilege, right? And then, of course, here you've got different pictures of historical pictures. And then, of course, it should be noted that when you go through the KKK, the second highest rank in the KKK is the Caliph. Caliph is that Pope, or is Caliph to do something to do with Islam? I can never remember. Caliphate.
Caleb,
Caliph.
Caliphate.
Okay, it sounds very Muslimy to me. Then, of
Yeah,
course, the imperial
does,
wizard
yeah.
has 10 assistants called genies. Jesus had 10 genies, right?
10
Did
G.
Jesus have 10
Yeah,
genies
yeah,
or
yeah.
10
He had,
apostles?
yeah.
I can't remember. It always 10 genies. I'm sure genies, jinns. Did Jesus have jinns or apostles? Because I think jinns can have something to do with Islam. And they call blacks a coon, which comes from the Arabic mushrikun, the unbeliever. So yeah, whatever.
Oh,
It's got nothing to do with Islam, of course, of course. Just
that piece, I remember you playing from a video you had. I think a video a year ago. You had an interview with his first name's Sam, something like Sam Hamoodan.
Sam Shamoon, yeah.
Yes, that's Sam Shamoon. Yeah, Sam Shamoon. I've seen. I've watched that utterly. Yeah, that video absolutely blew me away. Especially, well, first of all, the shirt on the Quran, but then what you revealed about the KKK. Yeah, yeah, just like astonishing. Yeah, like if I had to get the points like that I cover. Man, there's so much, but I think I'll just quote the first paragraph just to give you an idea, like the context, if I'm writing it. I just wrote, on Saturday, October 7th, 2023, the Iran-backed Palestinian radical Islamic terrorist organization Hamas launched barbaric attacks on Israel near its border with the Palestinian territory on the Gaza Strip, using rockets, motorized paragliders, boats, motorcycles, and other vehicles, whatever other means they could. Terrorists infiltrated with one goal: to murder, kidnap in Israel. And then I just go on that. Oh, yeah, I'll just get back. This is the point I really want to make, just introductory. Much has been made of the security failure by Israel, with accusations that a border fence upon which a cockroach could not supposedly cross without being detected was an Israeli deep state false flag operation to provide a pretext for Israel bombing and the ultimate invasion and occupation of the Palestinian Gaza Strip. I just say make of that what you will. However, the focus of this article is to debunk the notion of a perceived illegitimate state of modern-day Israel as a blank check justification for the inexorable and unspeakable barbarity of the Hamas October 7th attack. Yeah, and then I say, of which I have seen footage, including that of burnt bodies of babies, as well as kidnapped, bound Israeli and Thai citizens in a Hamas tunnel in Gaza, being legitimised in the Islamist, terrorist and anti-Semitic mindsets under the perceived non-existent right of the so-called apartheid state of Israel to exist. And then I then just say, later I will discuss the motivation and true agenda behind the pro-Palestinian, in effect, pro-Hamas protests globally, and how the nefarious globalist but anti-Zionist players of George Soros and the UN fit into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you like the main title is I am a Zionist, but George Soros and the UN are not. And then the subtitle, I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll just quote it. Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, and the subsequent globalist engineered propaganda war to obliterate Israel's right to exist. So I think, I suppose that kind of encapsulates then my article or essay there in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just, look, I have just been so sick of lies, honestly, and I think I found, I've had a talent to write and to research. So that's probably, look, the thing about that rubbish, that Israel is an apartheid state. I ended up watching and they quoted some of the 5-minute Dennis Prager videos. They're excellent. In one of them, he had this lady, a black South African, who was standing up for Israel. She says, "Look, he said, my father, grandfather, they experienced apartheid, but she said there's none here in Israel."
Yeah.
And
I grew up on
another one said, "Yeah, bingo, yes."
I missed it. Honestly, I would vote for that government tomorrow. And I can assure everyone on the stream right now, my family, from my grandmother to my uncles, my aunts, and my cousins, would throw the ANC out and they would vote for a white nationalist government tomorrow if there were elections and the old white Afrikaner presidents came on the ballot. They would say, hell yes, I'm voting for these guys because we are sick and tired of the mess the ANC has created, this incompetence and the corruption and the socialism of the ANC.
My word. Yeah, bingo. Absolutely, Lloyd. Yeah. And just on that point, like in the Dennis Prager videos, they made the point that in Israel, I'm not talking about the Gaza Strip or the West Bank, which is really Judea and Samaria, but Israel proper. 20% of the population are ethnically are Arab, but 30% of the doctors are Arab. So the Arabs are represented, and they're also in the highest positions of government in the court. I think they even have like a Supreme Court justice there. I think.
No, Israel is not an apartheid state. That's completely false. I don't want to go too late, obviously for myself, but I'd like to continue on this topic for a minute and get your thoughts, and then also just talk about Bankstown, because I think it's just relevant. It's not necessarily a huge topic of discussion, but I think, and I'd also like to invite another Australian friend of the channel, Villainous, up, if that's okay with you. We can invite him up, because I have two Australians then to just discuss the matter. Because this Bankstown thing, just to get thoughts from Australians, what are your thoughts on that, and what's the vibe, and the public sentiment, because I think these are quite important issues.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when I first saw that, the video there.
Before Bankstown, just back to your article. So what?
My article
from the article, because guys, I've dropped the links into the chat. I've also got links to Vince's website in the description, so all of these details are in the description. His X account, his YouTube, his YouTube, yeah, I think so. Yeah, and your website, it's all in the description. So please find these links there. So is your article. What are the main things, the main takeaways? And
Yeah, they
we're
tell us.
talking to,
Well, I first covered, like, to begin with, the birth of the modern day state of Israel on May 14th, 1948. Quickly, I deal with the so-called Nakba. How many Palestinians say, oh, it was Israel, that kicked us out of our homes, when in fact, like we know, it was the Arab armies telling them, leave.
yeah,
We will crush this Jewish state in its
and then
in
you
its
come back and
cradle.
take the house.
House, yeah. you know, um, that that's the first point. Like, I do make, um, uh, and the thing is too, if the Arabs had left Israel alone, the Arabs would have had a much greater share of that territory.
Hmm.
After they invaded, well, then their share of the territory was then was much less. That was, what was that? Yes, that was the 1947 UN partition plan. And I even go back to 1937-38. Under the British mandate, there was the Peel Commission too. They had a deal where the British would still hold control of Jerusalem, but they would have areas, partitioned between Jewish and, and,
Yeah.
and Arab.
What's
I thought,
interesting is that
yeah.
when the Jordanians had control of the land around Jerusalem and some of Israel, they actually
Mm.
destroyed graveyards, they destroyed neighborhoods, and they refused to allow Israelis access to the territories they controlled. Yet, and also you got to ask yourself, where the Middle East Jews? Nearly 1 million Jews were expelled after 1948 from all of North
Oh,
Africa,
yeah,
and the
my word.
population went to almost zero, which is an ethnic cleansing, which is a genocide. And then you've got in Israel a large number, as you said, the police are Arabs, Muslims, in the judiciary, in the hospitals, they're all Arabs, Muslims. They have equal rights. They can become judges. They can become politicians. They have all the rights of all the Jews, and yet you see no such thing, no such equality, no such equivalence in any single Arab country for Jews.
My word. See, what you have, for example, in I was going to say, I that idea of land. That's it. In Lebanon, for example, I think Palestinians there are not allowed to own land. They're not allowed to own
Mhm.
land in Lebanon. Israel Arabs, fine, they can own land. And if you want to really get into the thing of apartheid, I mean, look at Egypt. Look at the way the Coptic Christians, are treated. It's
Yeah,
commonplace there, for Coptic, Christian girls, and that, to be abducted, forced into converting into Islam.
yeah.
But these radical Soros-funded leftists, they they say nothing about that. Um, it's it's like
Yeah.
this whole Islamic leftist
You know,
agenda.
actions speak louder than words. And then people go, but
Yeah,
look at Revelation 9, what's the 9:2 or something, Revelation 2:9 and the Revelation 3:9. It says those who are the synagogue of Satan, when in fact it's like actions speak louder than words and they tell fewer lies. These people are favoring Islam. They're Muslims for all intents and purposes. Vince, this is Villain or Ian.
I've seen him once before. Yes, Ian. Yeah,
Yeah,
hi, Ian.
there you go, mate.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
thought,
I'm from Brisbane. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I've got relatives up there, not actually Brisbane, on the border.
yeah, on the border. Yeah.
yeah, so welcome. Sorry, I just thought I would bring him up because I mean, there's the issue of just maybe to get thoughts from both of you, but both in Australia about the situation in Australia. I mean, how people, especially after this Bankstown incident, October 7th, and now Bankstown. It's really. Remember, we started off with mentioning that Christians aren't really paying attention to Islam. They don't really care. Muslims care. They want Jesus to be a Muslim. They want Abraham to be a Muslim. They want everybody to be a Muslim. And now, after October 7th, Islam is in our faces, and we're seeing how ugly it is. And the Bankstown thing has made people, I believe, think, hold on, if they are willing to potentially kill Jewish patients, where else are they doing this? And what about, are we being cheated in the banks and the government? Where are these people infiltrated? What are they doing that's harming us? I think there's kind of this, I think the mask has come off, and they may have pushed their hand too far. I mean, your thoughts on that, Vince?
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah.
There was an immediate excuse to clamp down on hate speech, which is I think is actually might be counterproductive, unfortunately. But yeah, they were sacked straight away, right? And from their positions, um, and a law was rushed through the parliament to make that sort of speech illegal. But the
Well,
problem is,
what exactly was illegal?
sorry,
What exactly was illegal?
no, well, the well, threatening to kill the Jews, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry,
So
misunderstood. Yeah.
using but the problem is, it's like a lot of the hate speech stuff around the world. Where does it end? What's the scope? And because it's rushed through so fast, I'm a bit concerned that it might have there may be overreach. Which means
Exactly.
which means you can't be critical about other things, quite possibly.
Right.
Which is a concern of mine, is that you jump the gun with something like that, and for quite valid reasons. I mean, these guys lost their job,
And Muslims complained about it. They didn't condemn them for the threats of murder, but they complained about them losing their jobs. Yeah,
well, it's threaten to kill people if they find one randomly. Well, what are you going to do? There's a duty of care to the citizenry of the hospitals, so they can't have that really. Yeah. So in terms of the Muslim influence in Australia, it's the Australian culture is very welcoming. We've had a lot of immigration for a long time, and we've had problems in the past, probably about 20 or 30 years ago. Vince might be able to confirm this or not, with a whole bunch of people coming in boats, which went for probably for about 20 years. It was back and forth and on the nose and not on the nose. The problem with illegal immigration was that bucket loads of people died because they were coming in crappy boats and obviously paying off some form of bad boys to get in these boats in the first place. They just the boats would sink. They just get dumped off, and so that I'm not quite sure the actual proportion. It was a significant proportion of the number of people who were coming over in boats were just dying.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't really accept that in Australia. So it was it hasn't been the case we've accepted any form of migration like that for a very long time.
Yeah.
And you basically have to come in through the front door.
Right. And
so which is good, but we still are. Maybe I don't think we're smart enough in terms of things like Azima coming into Australia, Lloyd.
Yeah. Okay. That's true. Yeah. Agreed. Your thoughts, Vince? Your thoughts on all of that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I know a while back there was a back and forth about the boat, about the boat people, and I agree with Ian. Yeah, many of them ended up losing their lives, which straight away made me think of the American southern border, how dangerous that is. People. Especially isn't it through Panama? The Darien Gap. Some people, have lost their lives just with this mass flood of immigrants coming in, and the way America was going under that Biden-Harris regime, it was fast becoming not a country. If your country has no borders, there are no you don't have a country anymore. Mm-hmm. And in one recent article I wrote that, or a letter actually, I wrote that God is not a globalist. I look at Nimrod, if you like, the Tower of Babel. He was the first globalist. Whereas God, if you look, you can get passages from the New Testament and the Old Testament that say God wants borders. God wants borders. Yet, we'll get into this in another episode, but I ended up writing a letter to 86 of the three of these 86 Dietrich Bonhoeffer descendants, who I've got to say disturbingly are absolute full-on globalists, and by their rhetoric, they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and by their
Yeah.
rhetoric, I think they don't want any national borders, because they look at the rise of the National Socialist movement in Germany, as toxic nationalism. So they say the solution to that, then they think, or it seems to me, they want one world government. A great nephew of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, his name is Tobias Bonhoeffer. He works at the Max Planck Institute. He's a neuroscientist, but he's also on the board of governors for the Wellcome Trust, which is closely linked to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the World Economic Forum, for example. And I find that in the letter, I put some of the comments in there. I think, you're pushing dangerous jabs. I said, would your great uncle Dietrich condone this? I wrote to them because they wrote about the release of a recent movie on Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
I think something called Spy Assassin, and they attacked that movie as hijacking the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And they also took a swipe at Eric Matexas. He's another Trump supporter, a prominent conservative podcaster in America.
Yeah.
He also wrote a book of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And by the way, he's one of the major sources. His book is one of the major sources in my book, vilifying him. And so I was compelled then to write I ended up writing a 33-page letter to them, just pointing out their hypocrisy. Like they might say conservative people in America are violent, but then they'll completely overlook all the leftist violence, for example, that was perpetrated in the summer riots.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah. It's crazy with Islam as well. They'll say Christianity is violent and ignore literally the fact that Islam conquered huge swathes of territory and the largest empire in the world at one time. And it's cultural blindness, but also it's a predilection for lying. It's just a culture that's not based on truth. It's a culture that's based on denigrating yours, not really defending theirs, but just lying to promote theirs.
Lloyd, in the recent discussion you had with Osama Dakdok, you brought up the thing of the migration, that the Muslims leaving a Muslim country coming to the West, they can't do so just for saying, oh, we want a better life.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be in the service of jihad. Doesn't necessarily have to be violent jihad. It can be like the subversive, what dare I say, fifth generational war kind of jihad. But you can't just migrate there, just for a better life. And when I saw that explains a lot, like how they want our legal system, like wasn't there some years ago even an Anglican bishop in the UK? He was saying that Britain maybe should adopt Sharia law, or at least in some localities. I heard, and I'm thinking, don't you have any grasp what that entails? Yeah.
Anglican Church, man, the Anglican Church needs lobotomy.
Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah.
Villainous, any thoughts there?
Yeah, look, just on those two people, if you notice the vid on them, they're quite clean cut looking people, aren't they? They're quite neat and tidy. They seem to be have their wits about them. They're just normal people, right? And I think that's important to know. The reality is that these people with that sort of attitude are just random people walking around, and it's not like they're sort of hiding in corners with green bandanas on their forehead with Arabic writing on it. They're just random people. But it's quite clear that they're in their heart they have something else other than Australia as being a core principle, right? It is very much this Azima type or Ruksha type scenario. The people who are seen to be nice regular citizens are still in some sense supporting the hard line stuff, and that's really showed that up, hasn't it? Really, the whole scene is that these random people. They seem to be no different from anybody else you see walking down the street, but they're harbouring this deep Jew hatred, which is and it's just a requirement from their religion, right?
Yeah.
Kill all the Jews.
I just posted an article by Vince. You just sent me an article. Twitter
Yeah.
automatically shortens it. What was the article you sent me, please?
That's my letter that I sent to the it's a bit long. It's about 18-minute read that I sent to the Southwestern Sydney local health office. In voice, and they ended up replying. In a sense, it was perhaps a summary. In a sense, it was probably a summary of my Israel Hamas essay, really. Yeah. Because I thought at the centre, I was saying some of your stuff I think need some education, really, on the Israel-Palestinian issue. Because clearly, like those two, they have some major misconceptions. On what's going, on what's happening in Israel.
Yeah.
Like for example, I addressed the point, like they claimed, Israeli soldiers are just wanton murderous and child killers, for example.
Right.
I've addressed that. Yeah.
If academia is going to fail in its responsibilities to discuss Islam honestly, from an archaeological, historical, and just textual viewpoint, then it's up to us. And that's what we've been doing on YouTube. And if it's also going to neglect its duty in terms of informing citizens, then again, it's up to us. We have to do it. We are the media. We are the news. We are the truth. We're the ones who are going to speak on the facts, because the media is neglecting its duty. It's failing to inform. It's propagandizing. It's indoctrinating. So I think it's really up to us.
In Australia too, our socialist government, which we have at the moment, has also been making noises about bringing in people from Gaza as refugees, which I find completely insane. Like it's
bad idea.
I mentioned that too because of the contrast between those two nurses and that statement. It's these two nurses have been lost their job because of their attitude to
should be deported
to Jews, and now we're going to bring in people who have been indoctrinated to, like, unbelievably since they were born to hate Jews with extreme venom. That's just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, just responding to Basiljet, finding accommodation with Islam is like riding on the tail of, it's like crossing the tail on the back of the crocodile, or what's the scorpion riding on your back, in the back of the frog. That's that story, because Islam doesn't accommodate. Islam dominates. So it's only a matter of time until it starts to elbow everything else aside, because Jewish law, as it is understood, it's moral law. It's not civil law. It doesn't replace your legal system. So, Rowan being all accommodating, he doesn't realize that the crocodile's just going to eat him eventually. There is no accommodation with Islam. I mean, Islam, might be cruel to say it, but at some point, Islam needs to be banned, like the way Nazism is banned. And people say, what about this? What about the peaceful Muslims? Well, they're funding it. They call themselves Muslims, therefore they are compliant with the Sharia, and therefore and they are part of the ideology. It's like, what about the peaceful Nazis? It's like, do you really care that much about the peaceful Nazis? They were peaceful Nazis. All they did was bake cookies and wash their car and take their dog for a walk. They were still Nazis. They didn't mind what the other Nazis did. They believed in that. Go kill all those people. Go kill the Jews. Go kill the Slavs. They're okay with that. No problem. I have a problem with them being peaceful, but yet not batting an eye that they're going to murder me because I'm black. I'd say, the peaceful Muslims, they are irrelevant. Islam is the problem. So those are distractions.
Okay, so one of the problems with the Sharia law courts and things like that is that people are failing to realise that the Sharia is a complete alternate political system. So it's not actually just a little cuddly cord on the side there. This is a system that will hopefully expand and take over the Westminster system that they have currently. like that. Just if Sharia took over, that is, it'll be run like Saudi Arabia or something like that, because it's or Pakistan or something.
Hmm.
There may be some democracy amongst it or other, but it's sort of periphery, and so it's accommodating Sharia courts is a really bad idea. It's just basically you're just saying, oh well, we don't actually want Western civilization. We want something else.
Yeah. And this is
Yeah,
the fifth column you've allowed in the front door. Vince, your thoughts?
yeah, exactly. Um, and see, like mainstream media, like the ABC, I mean, they're almost saying, we to prove we're not racist, like we have to embrace certain aspects of Islamic law. I even saw, I think a long time, even on Channel 7, there was talk of allowing polygamy in Australia for Muslim families, and they asked this one commentator there on Channel 7, look, he's not really bright. They asked him, and he just shrugged his shoulder and he said, yeah, oh well, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, no, don't you grasp what a dangerous precedent that's setting? It's not going to, of course, it's not going to just stop on on polygamy. It will definitely it will eventually spread, and take over our whole legal system. It's like a way, dare I like to say, like with the a few years ago when we passed the gay marriage bill. They first said it was just equal rights, for gays, gay people to marry. But I think in the end, it's been a foot in the door now for the much more radical, whole transgender agenda.
That's all it is. It's a wedge.
Now, a wedge. Yeah, that's it. A wedge. Yeah.
It's just also about
Hey, guys, I'm just going to go. Just one quick. I'm just going to go for a minute. There's just a book I want to grab. I want to show you. Time, but just keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Just briefly, Dylan, on the issue of people saying, well, I've seen so many quote unquote Christians saying, well, Hitler was doing God's work. He was cleaning Europe of those nasty, people from Israel.
That's the Groiper thing that you see common in America at the moment.
But what's crazy is they completely ignore the fact that he was literally kidnapping children by the millions, as long as they were under a certain age, so that he could bring them to Germany and indoctrinate them into, which was like what Islam was doing with Janissaries. They were kidnapping kids and converting them and making them fight and doing things. So they were okay with that. They're okay with child kidnapping, murdering the parents, and then kidnapping the kids. They're okay with the fact that Hitler literally wanted to wipe out the Slavs, the entire Slavic population, all of Central and Eastern Europe. He wanted to murder the lot of them. So that means that the Poles had to die, all of them. Right, and your Groipers and all the Christians are okay with this. It's like this is repugnant. You're talking people are saying, well, it's okay to kill the Jews, but then they go, but then how about Hitler wanted to murder millions of disabled people, mentally disabled people, blacks. He wanted to kill the Slavs. He wanted to kill all the Russians. He wanted to kill all the. I'm like, you're okay with that too. It's like this is insanity. It's like you're fine with sort of. Yeah, no, that's okay, but then where was it going to stop? It's just these people are they're not moral. They're satanic. This is not Christianity. This is just evil.
We do have to be smarter as Christians on this. This is a tactic that governments have used for hundreds of years, is to have some form of agenda and smear like peanut butter on the outside Christianity, and that's what it's like. So these guys will say they're Christian, yada yada yada, but then lift the lid. It's like a Pandora's box. What is it underneath? And it's not Christian. It just says it is. It's like saying, "Oh, I'm a peaceful Muslim." It's okay. You seem to be a nice enough guy, but like the religion itself is terrible. It's like that. But to be honest, it is when I say you've got this issue here that they're trying to promote, which is something hideous, and they've got the Christianity on here they're trying to use this as a veneer. It's like they're conjoining the two in some form of not Hegelian. I can't remember the name of it.
Hegelian dialect.
Yes, it's a dialectic type. You're trying to bringing two opposites together and hopefully something pops out that's
Oh yeah, the
fantastic.
Hegelian dialectic. Yeah, the
Yeah,
synthesis
yeah,
of the thesis and the antithesis. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. So I mean, because they are like, how can you as a Christian who's supposed to love all people, doesn't matter who they are,
But
no
the
Jew
problem
or
is that is anti-logical. That actually violates basic logic because you cannot reconcile contradictories. Even God cannot. You cannot reconcile contradictories in God. You cannot say God is evil and God is good. God is one or the other. So logic says when two things are contradictories, you have to reject one. And here
yeah,
they're
so
trying to then deny logic. So it actually literally denies logic.
that's right. So I mean, look, Hitler did the same thing. Like occasionally went to church and whatnot to rah rah rah, but it's quite clear he wasn't in his later writings, right? It's just, he hated Christians like you wouldn't believe. In the same way he hated Jews. He just went for the Friday, the Saturday people before the Sunday people. A bit like
That's
sounds
right.
very familiar.
That's a common thing with it. It's a common thing with Islam. We right now we focus more on the Saturday people, then we will come for the Sunday people.
Sunday people, that exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Hitler hated a lot of things. He hated the Jews the most, but he hated Christians too. He hated the Slavs. He hated the Gypsies. He hated the Russians. He hated the Czechs. He hated the Hungarians. He was going to wipe them all out. I mean, he wiped out 20% of the Polish population. If these groypers can come and explain how that's a good thing, I'd love to hear your reasoning. Why it's a good thing he murdered all of these, mentally unwell and physically unwell people. How murdering something like 20% of the Polish population was just fantastic. Great idea. I mean, that would be great to know. Then I'd like to know how Christians can square that circle. Yes, Vince?
Yeah.
I was just saying, Lloyd, when I finished reading Mein Kampf, it got me to thinking, who today are just as obsessed with race as Hitler? And then I thought, wait a minute, the wokey woke cultural neo-Marxist left, they are.
Yeah.
With their woke, they have their woke totem pole. Honestly.
This whole critical theory thing is extremely racist.
My word! Oh yeah, it was hideous. You notice they're not using it now so much, are they? They tend to use it under the term DIE, diversity, inclusion, equity. Oh no, that's DIE. I mean diversity. Diversity, equity, inclusion, isn't it? Why didn't they use it as DIE? I thought DIE. I actually used DIE for the Japs too. Dangerous, ineffective, and expensive as well. So
yeah, didn't earn it. Yeah, I mean it's crazy stuff. It's a violation of everything that is rational and everything that is sacred. Quite honestly, it just undermines everything. And tell me, guys, did you think? Sorry to interrupt a moment. I'll give you more. Okay, finish your thought, please. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say the weird thing is that in terms of racism, the least racist countries in the world are where everybody's going to, right, and no one cares. So a country like Australia is actually extremely unracist. It's and
they
or
do have too many Australians there, though. I'm pretty sure of that. There's a lot of Australians there. That could be a small, as long as. Just kidding. Go on.
Well, I think this is common in the West everywhere. I think the West, in some sense, grown up out of it. Yeah, we've grown up out of racism, but there's still plenty of places in the world with it. But it's not places where they're welcoming people of all colours into their country. It's not those countries. Go somewhere else to find racism.
Yeah. I mean, the most racist countries are black. I mean, look at blacks in South Africa. Incredibly racist, but they think blacks are horrible, and blacks are tribal too, which is even worse. They hate other people that aren't them. People need to realize these other cultures are less sophisticated. That means that they're not at the same level. Ask yourself, 100 years ago, take Southern Africa? I mean, just facts. Southern Africa, blacks in Southern Africa. What was their level of technological development 100 years ago? Roughly speaking, the Stone Age. White people were building skyscrapers, massive cities, huge sanitation projects, hospitals, flying around the world, building submarines and telescopes and getting ready to make rockets. And what were black people doing? Living in grass huts. And this is not an exaggeration. We're talking 100 years ago. If white people hadn't brought technology to Africa, they'd still be living in grass huts. It's crazy, but it's true. It's not pleasant maybe for them to hear, but it's a fact.
Yeah, in Asia's a bit different. See, Asia's was the same, right? 100 years ago, they're all living grass huts, but they've sort of embraced things and are moving ahead.
No, no. The mentality hasn't changed.
No, I'm not saying that there's not can't find racist people there, but the embracement of technology and moving ahead and being competent is quite common in Asia.
Oh no, sorry, Asia. Yeah, sorry, my bad. I misunderstood you. Vince, you went to get a book. You said you went to go fetch a book.
Yeah. I'm going to pick up this book. It's a book by a gentleman. He's a Kiwi, New Zealander, Trevor Loudon, but he's lived for years now in America. He's lived in Florida, but I think no one on the planet knows the American left better than him. He wrote before the election. I read that book on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. A very good book. I finished reading that recently.
Yeah, he's a very good
because
speaker.
Australia has, in May, it can be no later than May. We are going to have a federal election, and it prompted Trevor Loudon to write this book. To write this book on our Marxist Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, comrade Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's 40-year relationship with Australian communism. I'm about halfway through reading it. He's
a worthwhile speaker.
Honestly,
he speaks brilliantly on communism. Fantastic knowledge.
Yeah, it's fantastic knowledge. Yeah, it is. Interestingly, just one thing, I did play a YouTube video, a 48-minute YouTube video from 2016. Anthony Albanese was there with his comrades, including one of his mentors, I think Frank Stilwell. Yeah, and during the speech, he mentioned already the concept there of the 30-minute city.
Oh wow! So now the UK's got the 15-minute city. Pretty soon it'll be the 7.5-minute city.
Yeah, he was talking about it for Western Sydney.
Yeah.
So there he was already.
We're almost at 2 hours. I'd like to sort of wind down if you guys don't mind. But
I know. I'm just getting. Yeah, I'll have stuff to do later too.
Yeah. So look at what happened in Southport, right? That really shocked people. This incident at Bankstown really shocked people. I think it's getting people to think wider about this threat, this fifth column that was let in the door, right? You've got other incidents like the Christmas attack in Germany, and now recently these 2 or 3 attacks. I mean, just before we started the show, like 20 minutes before we started the show, another stabbing attack happened in Germany. I'm pretty sure it was probably a Hindu, right? Maybe a Catholic that went around shouting certain religious phrases and stabbing people in a market in Germany. So I mean, dead bodies on the floor or whatever. I was looking at the photos. Don't you think that this is building and people are one way or another? I mean, the desire is there to push Islam out, to say no, ban mosques. Even look in Poland, there's one mosque in Warsaw, one. House mosques are forbidden. Public mosques outside of, if you go to little halls, no. And they monitor what's going on. So Islam doesn't get a foothold here. So people, I think, would love to see it in the UK, in America, in London, in France, wherever. I think people want that. The government's complicit, infiltrated, etc. But don't you think that these incidents are actually starting to wake people up, and that people might be dazed and just starting to wake up? But don't you think this? I'll give you guys like 2 minutes each, but don't you think this is now? We're at a point where this is starting to occur. People are waking up, and it's going to start changing politically.
I think there's some waking up. I know October 2023. We had the referendum on the voice referendum, which was supposedly give Aboriginals, a voice, a greater voice in Parliament. But I saw the Uluru document. The voice was only going to be the start. That was the wedge. It was a wedge for a lot more. I think that was evidence of the people waking up. And that was in the wake too, I've got to say, of a monumentally corrupt media that was pushing the voice.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, is it really fast enough? As you say, Lloyd, too, the agenda of Islam and the globalists is crumbling underneath them, although they're getting very close to their goal, right? Can we wake up in time so that the whole ground underneath them will collapse in time, right? I mean, it's no good if that ground collapses underneath them if they've already achieved their goal. Yeah.
I think part of the reason why they're it's collapsing underneath is because when they're getting closer to their goal, it's much more obvious how disgusting they really are. And
yeah.
so it's, and people, it's like a pendulum. You've almost gone way too far at the other one side before you can start being pulled back because it's just so disgusting. And that incident with the two nurses, right? I mean, it's just a disgusting thing about killing Jews randomly if they're brought into a hospital in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's crap. Is that really what the attitude of these people is? And it is. But the thing is, they've got to the point now where they feel comfortable saying that publicly. So
which is shocking.
they wouldn't have been comfortable saying that 10 years ago, but today, for whatever reason,
that's what's disturbing.
Yeah. But also think 2 months ago, you couldn't say things on YouTube and on social media. And now that the emperor is now back on his throne in the US, now suddenly free speech, and we can say things that were not acceptable would get you banned a couple of months back. You can now freely talk about them. So, I mean, there's these two forces that are coming to a clash, I feel.
I think X has probably helped that a bit too, because it's completely embarrassed all the other social media networks as well. Well, not that they're sort of kowtowing the same to what X is doing, but X has sort of freed things up. You know, there's stuff that you say on there, Lloyd, that like 5 years ago you wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, I'd be banned. I mean, Facebook used to ban me for weeks at a time, so I just stopped using Facebook. I haven't been on in 2 years. So yeah, Vince,
I'm permanently banned on Facebook as of early September 2022. I posted too much truth on the COVID. I posted too much truth on the COVID jabs.
I was banned for 8 months of the year, and I was like, I think that's just pointless. I'm on this. Yes, so Vince, last word to you. I would like to call it a day. It's just been 2 hours. We've got a lot
longer than we thought.
Guys, last question. Shall we do an Australia Day? Invite all the Australian viewers up and just talk about issues in Australia, just like a little round panel, or just all the Australians. What do you think? Should we do that in a couple of weeks?
It's only a couple of weeks away. It shows how much people give a shit about it.
The Australians up to talk about it, because I'm going to do a UK thing next week, and I mean maybe we can plan in Australia just to get the views from Australians. Just talk about issues in Australia. So Vince,
Lloyd, let's get on. Look, I really appreciate coming on. I've been struggling, to get somewhere where I can, platform, where I can speak. You're not a really large channel, but you're not a microscopic one either. I really appreciate the opportunity to really speak. And just finally, we won't have the time to play. There is a 3-minute video from Freedom Road Socialist Organisation from the American Summer Riots. Maybe next time we're on, we can play it. Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's called in my book, actually. Yeah.
Okay, now certainly. So we'll chat again. I mean, we'll talk after this, I guess, because I need to get to bed. So we'll talk more. And
11. It'll be after 11 o'clock now for you in Warsaw.
Next week I have a stream that actually goes from 8 till 10, and then I've got a stream again from 11 with Adam Seeker. So next week Wednesday I've got like 2 back-to-back streams, and it's going to be a late night for me. So yeah, it happens.
I've got to say, Poland. I've just say, I'm 10 months in Poland. It was one of the most wonderful times in my life. It was incredible. And being there too when Pope John Paul II passed away, that was something else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, good stuff. So yeah, Willem, thank you for coming on. Vince, thank you very much. Your first time on YouTube. I know it's not easy to find your feet, but yeah, it gets easier. I was bad at this when I started.
Yeah. Look, I know sometimes I did ramble. It's intimidating. This is only my second interview. I did have an interview with Vision Christian. I might send you the link later, with Vision Christian Media back in June, but that was only a 1 hour. Well, really, in effect, only a 45-minute interview. I felt like I needed more, and well,
that's cool. I mean, we'll plan something. We'll talk some more, and
we'll add more things. We'll get into stuff finally, maybe of my book in more detail. Anyway, another time. Just clearly how that links. But yeah, no, it was honoured to be on your show, Lloyd. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Great to have you, and
great to meet you, Ian. Too. Yeah.
No worries, Vince.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to get some more Australians on. We just do an Australian thing. If so, guys, you're in the, you can hear me. You're in the chat. So those who are interested, drop a comment afterwards. Let me know, and I'll plan something. And those of you who regularly post here who are Australian, we'll invite you up. So Vince, thank you very much. It's been really great having
Thank
you
you.
on. Thank you, and yeah, for your insights, your thoughts, and we'll do this again soon. All right, we'll chat again.
Okay.
And Ian,
All right then.
Villain, thanks again. Take care,
All right,
everyone.
guys. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yes, bye.